Yo, what's up, guys? Today we are going to be replacing the speakers on my LX450. I've already done most of the work, but what I've done is I've gone ahead and filmed it, and I'm experimenting with a couple different things here. So what I'm going to do is on this one, a lot of the procedures and a lot of the actual handwork that I do is going to be a voiceover. I'm trying something new. We'll see how this comes out. But anyhow, let me show you what I got going on. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm putting a set of these in the front. These are the 6.5 300 watt max. TSG 1620F-2. Okay. These fit pretty well in the front, but it is a very, very tight fit. And so in this video, I'm basically going to show you guys how I made them fit. Okay. I also took the opportunity to clean up the door panels a little bit on the front. I did remove the front door panels. And, you know, what I mean by that is I went ahead and kind of glued the edges on the leather, and the sound system, it sounds decent. I think it's going to sound great. I do plan on putting a different head unit, and I have mixed emotions about what I'm going to do with the center subwoofer that's in the center console. Part of me wants to delete that subwoofer and maybe install like a 10 in the back or something like that. But the other part of me wants to actually replace that subwoofer with a more powerful same size one, and then port that box to give it more bass and keep the stock OEM look. Haven't decided what I'm going to do with that. For now, I'm just going to do the speakers. For the rears, I already threw out the box, but let me show you the rears. Basically, what I bought were these guys right here. These are 4-inch speakers. TSF1034R, 150 watt max, 20 watts normal operating power, 4 ohms. All the speakers are 4 ohms. And these look pretty good. They will fit in there quite well. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. So basically what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go ahead and grab our door trim, or our trim tools, our trim removal tools. I like to use a combination of the metal one, and then I have a plastic one, which you will see here in a little bit. In this case, I like to use 2 types of screwdrivers. I like the small Phillips head, and then I like the bigger head Phillips head, because there are some bolts that require that bigger Phillips head here. So basically, I'm just going to start with removing the Phillips head for the door handle. I'm going to move on to removing the armrest. As you can see here, that guy just kind of pops out. Got to be gentle with it because it is very old. You don't want to break it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the front piece where the window buttons are in a moment. Here I'm removing one of the bigger head Phillips head screwdrivers. And then, yeah, basically what you want to do is you want to pop the front first and then slide it out. Okay, go ahead and unplug your connectors. You can see how it works right there. My son loves to be involved in all my projects, as you can see. Here I'm going to use that small, or that plastic trim panel remover again. I'm going to be very careful not to break it. You do the front first, and then it kind of slides out. We're also going to go ahead and go around the entire door panel and just pop off those plastic clips that hold the door panel onto the door itself. Be very careful, obviously, that goes without saying. These vehicles are very old, and those door trim panels are those door panels are very brittle. So, and it's made of like this weird I I don't know. I would call it a mixture between cardboard and wood. Nowadays they use basically all plastic, ABS plastic. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but they tend to be quite brittle. I like to use my windows down. Just find that it's easier to take the door panel out. And by the way, you saw me signal to the trim piece next to the rear view mirror or the side view mirror. Yeah, you don't have to remove that guy, by the way. They're brittle, they break easy, so don't do that. Just removing the door speaker here. In this case, those speakers are, they're glued on pretty tight, and so you do have to pry them out. I would go ahead and use your metal trim panel remover for this job because you do have to put some force on it. But it's not very difficult to do. And by the way, that plastic around the door panel or around the door itself, you don't have to do anything with that. This would be a good time for you to either replace that or go ahead and glue it back. I've used silicone in the past, and I just went to the hardware store and got myself some nice thick plastic and just kind of cut it around. I actually did that with my Civic. Alright, in this case, basically what I'm doing here is just showing you the difference between the factory speaker and the speaker that we are going to be installing. So obviously there's a difference in size. The new speaker is much thicker, much deeper. You can see there's a clear difference. And you can see that's about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more as far as mounting depth is concerned. So in this case, what I did was I went to the audio store nearby my house and got myself a 1/4 inch shim for the speaker shim. And then I'm using this flexible little handy saw that I bought a while back at Lowe's to cut off some of these tabs. Basically what you want to do in this case is you want to make it completely round. Not gonna lie, that part was a little, there was a lot of stuff to do, so that was a little time consuming. But I think in this case, if you decide to use one of these shims, your final outcome is going to be much better. Probably get better sound out of it. Be careful because they are brittle, they do break. Those tabs are kind of a pain in the butt. But managed to remove them here. I did kind of break it, but it doesn't matter. And then this is the part that gets a little hard. So those mounting tabs, they're not going to work. So you do have to remove those as well. I use my handy dandy little saw right here. It helps if you have a vise like I do. This is just a cheap Harbor Freight vise. I'd love to get myself one of those fancy or nice ones made in the USA, but they are pretty pricey, and I just needed a vise. So that's what I went with a while back. It served me just fine. Excuse me. In this case, I'm just kind of sawing the little pieces of plastic off, and then I'm going to be physically pressing the metal mounting tab out. You're going to see that in just a moment. Basically what I did is I made 2 cuts on either side, right? And those guys kind of pop off like that. The plastic trims, but you're going to be left with the metal mounting tabs. Those have to get pressed out. So basically I found a screw that kind of bolts onto it, and then just a socket, right? And very carefully, you don't want to try to pry them out with pliers or anything like that, because you're going to break the shim. You got to do this as carefully as possible to not break that shim. And as you can see, my method seems to work okay. I'm sure some other people have different methods, but this one works. Works all right. Yep. There it goes. And so basically what you have left is a round, or a mostly round shim. Again, that's a 1/4-inch shim. And that's going to give us the mounting depth that we need, because right behind the magnet is the track for the window. Alright, so next we're going to be cutting off the ears on the speaker itself. Everything has to be completely round in order for it to fit. So you're going to just kind of cut those off. The better your pliers, the easier this is going to be. I also later on went ahead and just kind of even shaved or deeper the little edges when I cut the ears off, or the little tabs off. Pretty simple. Alright, so here we're using self-tapping screws. Okay. And these are some shallow mount screws that I found. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to use basically a combination of self-tappers and a combination of these Phillips heads, like flush mount screws is the way I would call it. I just went to the hardware store, picked them up. In order to make the shallow mount screws, and the reason you have to use shallow mount screws is because when you put the speaker on top, if they're raised above the shim, your speaker's not going to sit flush on top of the shim. So in this case, I went ahead and shaved the insides of the tabs where those shallow mount screws are going to go. And I just took my file, my round file that is a Snap-on file set that I've had for a long time. It's a great product. Obviously, anybody that's familiar with Snap-on knows that they're not cheap, but they make really good stuff. So I went ahead and ground those little tabs out, and then what that allows me to do is take this shallow mount screw, put it in there. It's going to hold a shim, and that's going to make it a nicer fit all around. So I probably did more work than a lot of people would on this case, but you know, if you want it to look good, if you want it to last a long time, you got to go the extra mile, and that's what I tried to do. I just try to do everything to the best of my ability. You know, guys, I'm not in any hurry to get this done. The truck is working out great lately, and well, I just wanted some better sound system, but I didn't want to hear any rattles. I wanted it to be as close to factory as humanly possible. So that's what I'm going with here. And you can see the shallow mount screws work really well. I used the factory tabs to hold the shim. And you know, I don't know, you can kind of debate whether you need to take the step or not, because as you see, when I physically mount the speaker to the door panel, I'm going to go ahead and use those self-tappers, and they are going to go into the door panel. So, you know, you might be able to skip that step and really just use the self-tappers, but in this case, I wanted to be able to take everything apart if I need to, and maybe even go back to like a factory setting. I don't know. I just figured that was kind of the best way. In this, so now what I'm doing is I'm actually removing the connector off the old speaker. I used my soldering iron to melt the solder off the old speaker and physically pull the wire out. And the idea here is that, you know, I just wanted the most amount of wire, and again, I want the most factory plug and play option. So I like to use, you know, the OEM stuff, and again, I'm not in a hurry, so I don't mind putting the time into it. So as you can see, I used this plug type solder iron that I bought a while back. I've been through a few of them. This one works really well. I actually have a butane one from Matco that broke on me. Haven't been able to get it fixed. Spent a lot of money on it. Sometimes, you know, these simple guys like this one right here, I think I got that one from an old Radio Shack or something like that, but works pretty nice. So I'm just working on the wiring here basically, and I'm going to go ahead and extend these wires. So this is the factory wiring that came with the new speakers, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm going to solder everything up, right? I love having a vise. If you don't have a vise, I gotta tell you guys, it's makes your life a lot easier for many different things. So many, you can hold so many different things like wiring and parts and all kinds of stuff. What's funny, guys, is as much work as I put into things sometimes. In this case, I ran out of shrink wrap. And so I used electrical tape on this one, but you'll see that on the other ones, I actually ended up going out. I felt guilty about it. I went out, bought shrink wrap, and I used it on the other set. So anyway, make sure you have your shrink wrap ready. That way you can use it. I'm sure electrical tape does the job just fine. I've used it as well, but Anyway, you can see me putting some electrical tape on here, which I did feel guilty about that later on, and then put some shrink wrap on it. Moving on. So now we are going to go into physically mounting the speakers. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm going to drill the holes first. I'm going to make sure that my speakers are, nice and even, or, sit properly, clocked properly, I guess is the right word. So I'm pre-drilling through everything first. These self-tappers would probably go right through everything, but again, I don't want to break the shim. So, if I can pre-drill through and then go ahead and drive my self-tappers through, I'm going to do that. It's just another step that you take to make sure that you get a nice clean install and you're not breaking anything. I have all the tools, I have everything I need, so why not go ahead and use them, spend the extra time using it. Yep, basically going through. I did notice that one side of the door panel has thicker metal on it than the other side for whatever reason. So, and by the way, make sure that when you're drilling through, again, I have the window down, make sure you don't hit the window because you can crack that window. I did notice that. I said, I made note of that when I was drilling, and I made sure that I wasn't going to hit that window. But it is, again, these doors are very shallow. There's very little room that goes through them, and so, make sure that you don't hit that window if you do to remove the door panel with the window down the way I did. So here we're just going to go ahead and switch over so that we can install these self-tappers. And just for good measure, what I did is I went ahead and drove them through first and then put my door speaker on. That way, it just makes things easier. Again, I don't want to put any stress on anything. I want it to look as clean as humanly possible. I don't want any rattles. I want it to just be the nicest install, the nicest job that I can possibly do myself. And it did. I think once it's done, you guys will see that it turned out very, very well. It turned out very nice. I'm very happy with it. I've actually finished this video probably about a month after I actually did the install. And you know what, guys? It sounds great. I figured out that my 6-disc CD changer still works, and at work I found a bunch of CDs, so I was able to load them in there. Here I'm just plugging it in, right? Speaker goes right in. It just barely touches that window that window frame behind it, that window channel, just barely rests against it, but not too bad overall, you know. And it's nice because the door panel itself these speakers give you just enough room. If you do it like I did it right here, you have just enough room to fit the door panel over it. The door panel does touch the edges of the speaker a little bit, but man, it's so close. I don't think you're gonna really be able to do much better than this install right here as far as a flush mount is concerned. Maybe there's thinner speakers out there, or shallower speakers, if you will, but I think for the money, see how close that is? I mean, that's right there. I did take this opportunity also to go around my door panels and just bond the edges. I used an adhesive around the edges because you can see there's some water marks on the door cards right there, and some of the leather was coming off. So what I did is I went ahead and took this time to glue the leather back. I pulled on it, made sure it was nice and dry before I reattached it. And then, guys, I'm going ahead and working on the rears. The rear speakers are a lot easier to do. They have this little mount. Remember, they're smaller speakers, right? So you can't use the same size that you did up front. In the rears, you got 4-inch speakers. So you gotta use a smaller speaker, but it worked out great. So in this case, what I did is I went ahead and cut the wire. There is a connector in there, but it's way in there, and it's very difficult to get to it. I'm sure if you take the door panel off, you can probably get to it. But I said, you know what, I'll just cut it and then resolder it on there. As you can see, these speakers are all jacked up. They are Pioneers to begin with, and they're held in by that screw, that Phillips head screw on the back, which is difficult to get to because that thing has Loctite on it, and so you really got to work on it, but make sure you don't break the plastic housing, right? So I used an impact driver. Not very good at using impact drivers. You can see I kind of struggle with it a little bit because it's always like, well, which direction do you set it to? And then you think, well, I got it. Then you don't, like you saw me here. But, I kind of tried it a little bit harder and, kept messing with it a little bit until I finally got it. Not a big fan of impact drivers, but, they do serve their purpose and they do work. As you can see here, I got a little frustrated, just hit it a couple good smacks, and then it finally worked. That speaker comes out, and then you have that housing. You do have to modify that housing as well. Keep that in mind, right? So that's what you're left at right there. And I found the best way to modify that housing is with a hole saw, which you're gonna see here. My dog's in the background. She probably sees something in the back. Love my doggy. Her name's Piper. She's great. So this is the hole saw I used. It's a 3-inch. It's a 3-inch hole saw. And guys, you want to be careful when you're using this thing. The nice thing about it is that same screw that gave me a hard time earlier, you can use that as a reference, to your pilot hole, if you will, for the drilling part. Now, be careful, guys. This drill and that hole saw will cut you. It will cut you real easy. That thing gets away from you, so just take your time on this step right here. Don't put too much pressure on it because it will bite, and then it'll rip. You'll rip the tabs right off the housing there, or you'll, drill. You see that? That's what I'm talking about right there. So just be careful with it. Be careful with your hands. I probably should have been wearing some kind of gloves to do this, but anyhow, you can see that it really makes a nice hole, and it makes it exactly what you need, which is really, really nice. And then I went ahead and I just cut the edges right there as well. You do have to modify it a little bit more, but basically what you want to do is you want to make that thing as hollow as you can. And excuse me. And just make it so the speaker fits nice. Okay. You can see how, by the way, that pink tab, that's the way it faces up. Okay, so that's going to be up on the door. And again, you want to mount it so that it looks right. Because even though you put a grill over it, the speaker grill, you're still going to see it. And, there's a saying, the devil hides in the details. And those are the details that people look at, right? Or I look at. People may not notice it, but I know it's there. It will bother me if I don't have the speakers clocked properly. So that's what I did. In this case, you're modifying the tabs, the mounting tabs on the speaker. You're not going to cut them off because you are still going to use those mounting tabs. But basically, you want to cut an edge of them so they fit on the housing. Just take your time with this. I cut the tab on the wrong side by accident, so I had to go back and cut it on the right side. And that's what I was signaling to right there, by the way. So it's pretty easy. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to kind of fold those tabs over the plastic housing. And then you're going to take the screws that those speakers came with and you're going to kind of install them at an angle so they physically hold the speaker onto the plastic housing. And you can see here I'm folding in the tabs. You're going to fold the tabs around the plastic housing, and that's what your goal should be. I can't take credit for this, guys. I just like anybody else, I did research online. I looked through the forums, looked at other people's videos, and this is what they did. And so this isn't particularly my process. It's just a process I went through. This isn't something that I made up, okay? So, I got to give credit where credit is due. Somebody else figured this out before me. I just took those steps, incorporated my own steps into this install, and did it the way that I thought it should be, done. But my way is not the way. It's just the way I used. So you can see I was kind of deburring those edges with my files to make them fit nicely. I'm folding those tabs around the housing. Not all the way, by the way, okay? You don't want to make them flush against the housing. You want to give it a little bit of an angle, because when you drill and install those screws, those mounting screws, you want them to go in at an angle so they hold the speaker down. But you don't want those screws going in, flush against the housing. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. Just a moment. You do want to go ahead and install, before you bolt the speakers down, you want to install the speaker wire onto it, okay? Because you're not going to get a chance to do it once you have it bolted into the housing itself. So that's what I did here. You can see the speakers sticking out through the back. I pre-drilled those holes first. Anytime you can pre-drill stuff, it just comes out a lot better. You don't want to have to struggle too much. And be careful when you're drilling through, and see how I'm kind of drilling through at an angle. Be careful you don't hit the speaker. Just, take your time. Don't put too much force on it, because once it lets go, you don't have control over the drill. It goes through, hits the speaker. You might damage your cone. Who knows? And when you do the same thing with the screw, again, this is why you don't want to screw in completely flush. You just want to do it at an angle enough so it holds that speaker down to the plastic housing. That's all you really want to do. But it works out. You can see, this is what I'm talking about. See how it's at an angle? That's what you're looking for. You're not gonna drill them in and screw them in all the way. You just want to do it enough so it holds it down. Okay. And again, watch the back. It's a tight fit, so you can 100% hit your speaker every time you screw one of these mounting screws in. Look at the back. Make sure you're not, you're not hitting the speaker itself. But overall, this makes for a nice clean install, guys. I mean, it's gonna bolt right in. They sound great. Very pleased with the way this turned out. Hey, shrink wrap, what? Went ahead and bought more. I just went ahead and bought a whole kit. I'm using these. By the way, I cut them in half. There's no need to use the entire thing. So I just cut them in half. And then that way you get 2 uses out of 1 strip. So I went ahead and slid my shrink wrap wire strippers and the whole set of wire strippers. You can definitely find better wire strippers out there, guys. There's those nice ones that are self-adjusting. You don't have to find the right thing, and it just does a really nice job. I should probably invest in one of those, but in this case I'm just working with what I've got. All right, so now we're gonna move on to physically installing these speakers. Now this is my soldering iron that I was telling you guys about. Those work the best. I know it's daylight, but I like getting as much light as humanly possible. So I went ahead and put my little LED light on. Now, the reason for the step stool is because it's metal. You're using a speaker with a magnet on it. It's a great way to hold a speaker while you're soldering your wiring. If you just kind of clip it on there, it's going to stay at about the right height, and it's going to give you the ability to go ahead and solder this up. So I like to put the solder iron below the speaker, so it or below the wire, not the speaker, below the wire, and then come in with the solder above. And basically what you want to do is you want to get that speaker wire nice and hot, and then let the solder melt right into it. Once you do it properly, what happens is it'll absorb the solder. The rear speakers were a lot easier to install, by the way, than the front ones. The front ones, you have to remove the door panel. The rear ones you don't. It was more fabricating for me on the front speakers than there was on the rear. Obviously I did the I did the side. I did the other side, one side before I did the other, and so that worked out pretty nice. But yeah, trust handy dandy Bic lighter. You should always have a Bic lighter laying around. They're good for a lot of different things, right? You can use butane, all that stuff, but just a good old-fashioned Bic lighter is probably best. I like to use it for shrink wrap. So now I'm moving on to the next piece of wire here. We're, approaching the end, if you will. Getting down to part where we're almost done here. And again, I highly recommend this install. I mean, guys, it's it's definitely worth it. It came out so nice. The the sound system sounds so good. I am gonna replace the factory radio. I'm gonna put a double din. I believe I'm gonna go with an Alpine head unit. I'll make a video on that as well. For now, again, guys, I'm enjoying that 6-disc CD changer that I figured out was working, and it's got all the little trays in it and all that stuff. Came out very, very nice. So here I'm installing my speakers. Again, the pink tab goes up. Keep that in mind when you're mounting the speaker to that plastic housing. Very simple here. Screw them in, put your grill on, and voila, you're done. Very simple install, guys. Again, this came out very nice. Definitely a nice upgrade. Almost looks like a peace sign. Well, guys, that's a wrap. Got the new speakers installed. The door panels look great. They look like the way they did when when they rolled out the assembly line, which is the look that I was going for overall. I didn't want aftermarket grills on it. I prefer the OEM look, and that's exactly what I got. The speakers sound great. Overall, they weren't very expensive. I think I spent about 150 bucks on them, and then I bought the spacers for about 10 bucks. There was little things here or there that I got extra, but overall, fairly inexpensive project. Definitely something that anybody can do. You can take your time like I did. It's not something that you have to do all at once. You can certainly do one door panel at a time if you'd like, or you can do them all. Once you get your process down, it's very easy to fly through the rest. And so the first speaker is the one that took me the most, just to figure out exactly what I was going to do. I did also go online and go on some YouTube things, and so it's not something that I made up. It's not a process that I invented by any means. I certainly don't want anybody to think that. Obviously, I did my research. I saw what other people were doing. I'm just documenting kind of my progress with the LX450. Guys, thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I should have done something different. I am going to replace the head unit. I think I know what I'm going to go with. I think I'm going to go with an Alpine head unit, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do as far as the subwoofer just yet. I kind of have a few ideas. I want the factory look, but I want it to sound good. And I don't really want a speaker box in the trunk because I have other plans for the trunk. So anyhow, thank you for watching this video. I will make another one, and hopefully